The night was supposed to be like any other. 16-year-old Olivia sat alone in her dimly lit bedroom, the glow of her laptop flickering across her face as she scrolled mindlessly through social media. But tonight, something felt different. A dull nausea had settled in her stomach, one she couldn't shake. She had been feeling off for weeks, tired, moody, and sick in a way that no common flu could explain. At first, she dismissed it as stress. Junior year was overwhelming, and with college applications looming, the pressure had been unbearable. But deep down, an unspoken fear clawed at her chest, whispering a truth she wasn't ready to face. The unopened pregnancy test sat beside her on the nightstand, staring back at her like an accusation. She had bought it days ago, but couldn't bring herself to use it. Not until now. Her hands trembled as she picked up the small box, heart pounding so violently she could hear it in her ears. The bathroom felt suffocating as she waited, each second stretching into eternity. When she finally forced herself to look down at the test, her breath hitched. 2 pink lines. The world around her blurred, her vision tunneling as reality came crashing down. Pregnant. It didn't feel real. It couldn't be real. And yet there it was, the undeniable truth staring her in the face. She felt like she was drowning, gasping for air as panic swelled inside her. But the horror had only just begun. Because this wasn't just any pregnancy. This was a secret she could never. Olivia felt like she was sinking, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The walls of her bedroom, once a safe space filled with books, posters, and remnants of childhood innocence, now felt suffocating. She sat curled up on her bed, her fingers gripping the pregnancy test so tightly, her knuckles turned white. She replayed the last few months in her mind, searching for the moment everything had gone wrong. But had there even been a single moment? Or had it all been leading to this? The late-night tutoring sessions, the lingering looks, the quiet whispers of reassurance, each memory felt different now, tainted with an unsettling truth she could no longer ignore. The question clawed at her brain, was she ever in control? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand, snapping her out of her thoughts. She hesitated before picking it up. A message from her best friend, Mia. Are you okay? You've been acting weird. Olivia's stomach twisted. Maya had always been able to sense when something was off, but how could she ever explain this? Not even Maya, her closest friend, would understand. If she told her the truth, would she believe her? Would she turn against her? Or worse, would she tell someone? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through Olivia's body. She wasn't ready for anyone to know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She forced herself to think logically, to piece together her next move. If she was pregnant, then at some point, people would have to find out. But before that happened, she needed to talk to him. Mr. Carter. The thought of facing him made her stomach churn, but what choice did she have? Would he be shocked? Would he panic? Or had he already thought about this possibility? Had this happened before? The more she considered it, the more questions she had. And the more she thought about it, the less sure she was that she really knew him at all. A part of her wanted to believe he cared about her, that he would take responsibility. But another part, the part of her that had been silenced for too long, whispered that she had been blind, that she had been fooled, and that maybe, just maybe, Mr. Carter wasn't the man she thought he was. Because lately, strange things had been happening. Texts from an unknown number warning her to be careful. A car she kept noticing parked outside her house late at night. Whispers in the hallway when she walked past, as if people knew something. She had brushed it off before, convinced she was being paranoid. But now she wasn't so sure. Had someone found out? Had someone been watching her? And if they had, what were they planning to do about it? Olivia barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, her mind spun in circles, replaying every interaction, every conversation, every seemingly insignificant detail that might explain how she had ended up here. When her alarm blared the next morning, she felt like a ghost, moving through her morning routine in a daze. The pregnancy test was shoved deep into her desk drawer, hidden beneath old notebooks and loose papers, as if burying it could make it disappear. But nothing could erase the reality of it. She needed answers, and she needed them now. At school, everything felt off. The hallways were the same, filled with the usual mix of gossip, laughter, and the occasional argument between couples who wouldn't even remember what they were fighting about by lunch. But Olivia felt different. Exposed. Like people were looking at her just a second too long, whispering just a little too quietly when she walked past. Was it in her head? Or did they know? She gripped her books tightly and kept her head down, trying to ignore the gnawing paranoia that was quickly becoming impossible to silence. By the time she reached Mr. Carter's classroom, her hands were clammy, her heart racing. He sat at his desk, grading papers, looking as calm and collected as ever. When he glanced up and met her gaze, his expression didn't change. No flicker of fear, no hesitation, just the same friendly smile he always gave her. For a brief moment, she thought maybe she had been wrong. Maybe she had overreacted. Maybe she was making a big deal out of nothing. But the second she stepped inside and quietly closed the door behind her, his entire demeanor shifted. The smile faded, his jaw tensed, and when she muttered the words, "We need to talk," she saw something flash in his eyes, something cold, something calculating. Before she could say anything else, his phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at it, his expression darkening for just a second, before he turned it over, screen down. Olivia caught a glimpse of a message just before he hid it. "She knows." Her stomach dropped. Her blood turned to ice. "Olivia, are you okay?" His voice was gentle, concerned, but suddenly it felt wrong. Forced, like he was playing a role. Her breath caught in her throat. Someone else knew, and whoever they were already one step ahead of her. Olivia's entire body tensed as she stared at the phone on Mr. Carter's desk, her mind racing. She knows. Those two words sent a chill down her spine. Was the message about her? Who sent it? And why did he react like that? 1,000 possibilities crashed through her mind, each one worse than the last. Mr. Carter barely hesitated before flipping the phone over, forcing a casual smile, as if he hadn't just received a message that changed everything. But Olivia had seen it, and now she couldn't unsee it. Her instincts screamed at her to get out of there, but she forced herself to stay, to act normal. If she let him see her fear, she would lose whatever little control she had left. I don't know what to do," she said, carefully choosing her words, watching his every reaction. His expression softened, like he was relieved, like this was the conversation he expected. "I know this is overwhelming," he said, leaning forward, his voice calm, almost soothing. "But you don't have to figure this out alone. We'll talk after school, somewhere private." The way he said it, "somewhere private," sent a fresh wave of unease through her. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't panicking. If anything, it felt like he was planning something. The bell rang, breaking the tension just enough for Olivia to mumble an excuse and slip out of the room. As soon as she was in the hallway, she exhaled shakily, her mind spinning. Who else could know? And how did they know? She needed to talk to someone she could trust. But who? Maya had been acting strange lately, more distant than usual. At first, Olivia thought it was because she had been pulling away, lost in her own mess. But now, she wasn't so sure. Had Maya figured something out? Or worse, was she keeping secrets of her own? Before she could think too much about it, her phone vibrated in her pocket. Another message. She pulled it out with trembling hands, expecting some cryptic warning from an unknown number. But it wasn't. It was from Maya. "We need to talk. NOW. A jolt of panic shot through Olivia's chest. Maya never texted like that, short, demanding, urgent. Did she know? Was she about to accuse Olivia of something? Warn her? Expose her? She hesitated before replying, but then, before she could even type a response, another message popped up. Check your locker. Her heart pounded as she turned on her heels, weaving through the students filling the hall. She reached her locker, glancing around before slowly opening the door. A folded piece of paper sat on top of her books, placed there carefully, intentionally. Her hands shook as she grabbed it, unfolding it with caution. Inside, in rushed, uneven handwriting, was a single line that made her blood run cold. He's lying to you, and you're not the first. Her breath caught in her throat. Everything around her seemed to fade, the noise of the hallway turning into a distant hum. This changed everything. If she wasn't the first, then what happened to the others? And why had no one ever spoken about it? She was in deeper than she ever realized. And someone out there wanted her to wake up before it was too late. Olivia's hands trembled as she gripped the note, her mind spiraling with possibilities. The hallway around her felt like it was closing in, the voices of passing students blending into an incoherent blur. He's lying to you, and you're not the first. The words echoed in her head, each syllable slicing through her like ice. She wanted to believe this was some cruel prank, some twisted joke meant to scare her, but deep down, she knew better. This was real. Someone was warning her, and if they were willing to go this far, it meant they knew something she didn't. And that terrified her more than anything. Before she could process what to do next, her phone vibrated again. She sucked in a sharp breath before looking at the screen. Another message. But this one wasn't from Maya. It was from an unknown number. You need to stop asking questions. Olivia's blood ran cold. Her breath came out in short, uneven gasps as she quickly scanned the hallway. Was someone watching her right now? Were they standing in the crowd of students rushing to their next class, blending in like nothing was wrong? Her skin prickled as she turned, half expecting to lock eyes with some faceless threat lurking in plain sight. But there was no one. At least, no one obvious. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she shoved the note deep into her pocket, grabbed her books, and slammed her locker shut. She needed to find Maya. Now, whatever was happening, her best friend was somehow caught up in it, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Maya knew more than she had let on. But as Olivia made her way toward the cafeteria, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Maya. Forget it. I can't talk. Just go home. Olivia froze mid-step, dread pooling in her stomach. What? A few minutes ago, Mia had been desperate to talk. Now she was pushing her away. It didn't make sense. Something's wrong. Maya was scared, really scared. Heart racing, Olivia picked up her pace, her mind set on finding Maya before she vanished completely. But when she turned the corner near the gym, she stopped dead in her tracks. The hall was nearly empty, except for a few students lingering near the vending machines. But Maya wasn't there. Instead, Olivia's gaze locked onto something that made her breath hitch. Maya's locker was wide open. The contents had been emptied, papers scattered on the floor like someone had gone through them in a hurry. Olivia's chest tightened as she stepped closer, her pulse hammering. Something wasn't right. Maya was careful, meticulous. She would never leave her locker like this. Olivia crouched, scanning the papers littered on the ground, and that's when she saw it. A torn piece of notebook paper, barely clinging to the bottom shelf. She reached for it, hands shaking, her eyes widening as she read the hurried scrawl. They know about us. I have to go. Olivia's breath hitched. Us? What did that mean? And who was they? A fresh wave of panic surged through her as she stood frantically scanning the hallway. Maya was gone. Not just avoiding her, gone. A terrifying thought crept into Olivia's mind, one she wasn't ready to face. What if she didn't leave on her own? And worse, what if she was next? Olivia's hands were ice cold as she stood frozen in front of Maya's empty locker, her pulse roaring in her ears. They know about us. I have to go. The words clawed at her brain, twisting everything she thought she understood into something far darker. Who was us? Mia had never been involved with Mr. Carter, at least, not that Olivia knew. But what if she had been wrong? What if this wasn't just her story? A sickening realization settled in her chest. What if Maya was the first? Her breath came in short, panicked bursts as she fumbled for her phone, dialing Maya's number with shaky fingers. It rang. Once. Twice. Please pick up. But just as she thought it would go to voicemail, the ringing stopped. Silence. And then breathing. Shallow. Uneven. Olivia's grip tightened. Maya? Where are you? What's happening? She waited, her heart slamming against her ribs. More silence. Then finally, Mia's voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. You have to stop looking, Liv. You don't understand. A cold wave of fear washed over Olivia. Maya, just tell me where you are. We'll figure this out together. But Maya let out a shaky breath, like she was holding back tears. No, it's too late. Her voice cracked. I tried to warn you, but I didn't realize. It was never about him. The line went dead. Olivia stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, her entire body numb. Not about him? What did that mean? Every instinct told her to run, to get out of the school, to pretend she never found that note in her locker. But she couldn't. Something deeper was unraveling, something bigger than she had ever imagined. And now Maya was caught in the middle of it. Or worse, she had always been in the middle of it. She barely noticed the presence behind her until a shadow stretched across the scattered papers on the floor. A low voice cut through the silence, steady and unnervingly calm. You should have left this alone. Olivia spun around, her breath catching in her throat. And there, standing just a few feet away, was the last person she ever expected. Not Mr. Carter, not some faceless stranger, but someone she had trusted all along. Olivia's stomach twisted as she locked eyes with the person standing before her. A familiar face, one she had never thought twice about. Someone who had been there through it all, through the whispered rumors, through the late-night confessions, through the moments when she had felt like she was losing her grip on reality. But now, seeing them standing there, their expression cold, their presence calculated, she realized the truth. They had never been on her side. Her mind raced, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her body refused to move. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She wanted to sound strong, but there was no hiding the fear that laced her words. A smirk tugged at the corner of their lips, like they had been waiting for this moment. "I should be asking you that," they murmured, stepping closer. "You've been digging where you shouldn't. Asking the wrong questions. Now Maya's gone, and you're next unless you start making smarter choices." A wave of nausea hit Olivia. It wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. She swallowed hard, her thoughts colliding into one another in a frantic attempt to make sense of it all. How long had they been watching her? How much did they know? Were they the one who left the note? Or worse, were they the reason Maya disappeared? She took a shaky step back, her fingers tightening around her phone. But before she could even think about calling for help, their voice dropped lower, sharper. "If you want to make it out of this, you need to let it go. Walk away now, and you can pretend none of this ever happened." The words sent a chill down her spine, but Olivia forced herself to hold their gaze. "And if I don't?" she asked, her voice steadier this time. The smirk vanished. Their jaw tensed, and for the first time, Olivia saw something flicker in their expression, something close to regret. "Then you'll end up just like her." The words were soft, almost sympathetic, but the weight behind them was crushing. Olivia's breath caught. This was it. The moment she had to decide. If she backed down now, if she walked away like they wanted, she could escape whatever this was. She could pretend she never found the note, pretend she never saw the messages, pretend she never questioned Mr. Carter. Maybe she could even convince herself that Maya would come back, that this would all fade away, like some terrible dream. But deep down, she knew the truth. If she walked away, she would never know what really happened. She would never know if Maya was safe, or if she had been silenced like whoever came before her. And most of all, she would never know how deep this went. How many more people were trapped in it? How many more secrets were buried beneath the lies? Her heart pounded as she straightened her shoulders, her pulse screaming at her to make a choice. One path meant survival. The other meant uncovering the truth, no matter the cost. And Olivia knew, in that moment, there was no turning back. Olivia's entire body tensed as the weight of the moment crashed down on her. She could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, drowning out everything else. The person in front of her, someone she had trusted, someone she had confided in, wasn't here to help her. They were here to silence her. And if they knew this much, then that meant she had been surrounded by lies from the very beginning. She took a slow step back, but they mirrored her movement, closing the distance between them with unnerving calm. "I don't want to hurt you, Olivia," they said, their voice smooth, practiced. "But you're making this harder than it needs to be." The cold certainty in their tone made her stomach twist. This wasn't just about Mr. Carter. It had never been just about him. This was bigger. A horrifying thought struck her. How deep did this go? If the person in front of her was involved, then who else was? The teachers? The administration? The police? Every conversation she'd had over the past few weeks replayed in her mind, details she had brushed off now feeling like massive red flags. The subtle warnings, the way people had avoided eye contact, how Maya had pulled away long before she had even found the note. She had been in danger long before she ever realized it. "I just want to find Maya," Olivia said carefully, her voice laced with desperation, hoping to break through whatever wall they had built around themselves. "She's my best friend." The words caught in her throat. "You know that?" Something flickered in their expression: hesitation, doubt, guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Maya isn't your problem anymore," they said firmly. "And if you're smart, you'll stop looking for her." The words hit Olivia like a slap. What did you do to her? The raw fear in her voice cracked something inside of her, and for the first time, she didn't care if they knew she was scared. She was scared, but she was also furious. Her former friend exhaled sharply, as if frustrated by her persistence. Then, without warning, they reached into their pocket and pulled out a phone, Maya's phone. Olivia's breath hitched, her world tilting dangerously. "She wanted me to give you a message," they said, holding it just out of reach. Then they turned the screen toward her. Olivia's stomach lurched. A single text, unsent. "Don't trust anyone, even if it's me." Her knees nearly buckled. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a trap. Maya had known she had always known, but she hadn't been able to say anything outright. She had been trying to protect Olivia in the only way she could. Olivia's entire body went rigid as her so-called friend tucked the phone back into their pocket. "You were never supposed to see that," they muttered, their voice colder now, harsher. "You were never supposed to get this far." And just like that, Olivia realized the truth. This wasn't about keeping a secret anymore. This was about making sure she never had the chance to expose it. The walls were closing in, and now there was only one thing left to do: run. Olivia ran. She didn't think, didn't look back, she just ran. Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps as she tore down the dimly lit hallway, her shoes pounding against the linoleum floor. She could hear footsteps behind her, steady, unhurried, like they knew she had nowhere to go. But she didn't care. All she knew was that if they caught her, she wouldn't get another chance. She twisted around a corner, nearly slipping as she skidded to a stop in front of the emergency exit. Locked. Of course it's locked. Panic clawed at her chest as she spun around, searching for another way out. And that's when she saw it, the stairwell. If she could just make it outside, she could run, scream, fight, do whatever it took to get away. But just as she bolted toward the stairs, a voice called out behind her, calm and knowing. "Olivia, you're making this worse for yourself." She froze. For a split second, she thought about giving up. Maybe if she stopped fighting, they would let her go. Maybe she could pretend she didn't know anything, that she'd been scared and overreacted. But then she remembered the text. Don't trust anyone, even if it's me. Maya had fought to warn her, even when it had cost her everything. She wouldn't let that be for nothing. Gritting her teeth, Olivia made a sharp turn and dashed up the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time. The air in the stairwell was thick, suffocating, the walls closing in around her as she reached the top floor, a part of the school that had been under renovation for months. The hallway was dark, half the lights flickering, plastic sheets covering open doorways like makeshift curtains. It was the perfect place to disappear. She ducked behind a row of lockers that had been pushed against the wall, forcing herself to quiet her breathing. Footsteps echoed up the stairwell, slow and deliberate. They were toying with her now, dragging this out, letting the fear sink in. "You can't outrun this," the voice taunted, drawing closer. "You think this is about Carter? You think he was the mastermind?" A low, bitter laugh followed. "He was just the bait." Olivia's breath hitched. Bait? Her mind spun, piecing together the scraps of information she had collected. The missing girls, the buried rumors, the warnings that had come too late. This wasn't just about a single teacher abusing his power. This was bigger. A system designed to protect the guilty, a network of people who made sure their secrets never saw the light of day. That's why Maya had been silenced. That's why Olivia had become the next target. A shadow passed over the lockers, and she knew she had seconds left before they found her. Her eyes darted to the plastic sheeting rippling in the draft from an open window at the end of the hallway. That's it. The only way out. Swallowing her fear, she braced herself, then lunged from her hiding spot, sprinting toward the window with everything she had. "Olivia!" The voice snapped, but she didn't stop. She shoved past a stack of construction materials, reached for the plastic sheet, and tore it aside only to stumble to a dead halt. The open window wasn't an escape. It was a trap. Standing on the other side was Maya. Olivia's heart nearly stopped. She looked different, her face pale, her eyes wide with something unreadable. But she was alive. "Maya?" Olivia gasped, taking a step forward. "We have to go." "Come on." But Maya didn't move. Instead, her gaze flickered past Olivia, toward the figure standing behind her. And then Olivia saw it, the smallest shake of Maya's head. Barely there, but unmistakable. No. Cold realization slammed into Olivia like a freight train. It wasn't just about Maya. It was never just about Maya. The moment she had started asking questions, she had stepped into a game she never even knew she was playing. And now, staring into Maya's desperate eyes, she understood the truth. Maya hadn't escaped. She had been turned. Before Olivia could react, she felt the presence behind her shift. A hand gripped her wrist, yanking her backward. The last thing she saw was Maya's haunted expression before the world spun and everything went black. Olivia woke to the sensation of cold metal against her skin. Her wrists ached, her head throbbed, and when she opened her eyes, she was met with darkness. Panic surged through her veins as she struggled against the restraints, but it was no use. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut she had lost. They had won. Somewhere in the distance, she heard a door creak open. Footsteps approached, slow and methodical, and then a dim light flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the room. Olivia squinted against the harsh glow, her breath catching as two figures emerged from the darkness. One was the person who had betrayed her. The other was Maya. The sight of her best friend standing there, alive but utterly changed, made Olivia's stomach churn. "Why?" she rasped, her throat dry, the word barely escaping her lips. "Why are you doing this?" But Maya didn't answer. She just stood there, her face a mask of quiet resignation, as if she had already accepted whatever fate had been decided for her. A voice cut through the silence, low and controlled. "You still don't get it, do you?" Olivia's betrayer stepped forward, their expression unreadable. "This isn't about you. It was never about you." They crouched beside her, tilting their head. "You were just too stubborn to leave it alone." Olivia's chest tightened, but she forced herself to meet their gaze. "So, what happens now?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. A slow, almost pitying smile spread across their face. "That depends." They stood, pacing slightly. "We could make this easy for you. Let you forget. Let you walk away." Their voice softened, but the threat beneath it was unmistakable. "Or we could do what we did to Maya." Olivia's gaze darted to her friend, searching for something, anything that resembled the girl she once knew. But Maya only stared at the floor, silent, unmoving. Olivia's heart twisted. This is what they do. They don't just silence people. They break them. They take everything until there's nothing left. But Olivia wasn't Maya. Her mind raced, grasping at possibilities, escape routes, weaknesses. She had one chance, one moment to turn this around. She took a slow, deep breath, forcing her body to relax, to appear as though she was giving in. Then, with every ounce of strength she had left, she wrenched her body sideways, tipping the chair over with a violent crash. The distraction worked, shouts erupted, footsteps scrambled, but Olivia was already moving. She twisted against the restraints, ignoring the pain, as she reached for the sharp edge of a broken tile on the floor. Her fingers found it, dug into it, sawed at the ropes with frantic precision. By the time they reached her, she was free. Chaos exploded around her. She lunged, knocking over the nearest figure, adrenaline surging as she bolted for the door. A hand caught her wrist, Maya's. For one brief second, their eyes met, and Olivia saw something flicker in the depths of her friend's gaze. Not defeat, not resignation, but a whisper of who she used to be. "Maya," Olivia gasped, her voice raw. "Come with me." Maya's grip tightened for a split second. Olivia thought she would fight her. But then, against all odds, Maya let go. Olivia didn't wait. She ran. The night air hit her like a shock, the cold biting at her skin as she stumbled into the open. She didn't know where she was going, didn't know if she was being chased, but she didn't stop. Not until the distant wail of sirens cut through the air, not until she saw the flashing red and blue lights slicing through the darkness. It was over. Or at least, this part of it was.